Hello everyone, welcome to Blood, Guts, and Social Commentary. Today will be part 5 of our look at public domain horror films. 1961, The Devil's Hand. A man is haunted by visions of a beautiful woman, but when he finally meets her, he winds up involved in a satanic cult. 1961, Werewolf in a Girls' Dormitory. At a girls' school, several students are murdered by a snarling, wolf-like creature. Suspicion falls upon the newly arrived teacher. 1961, The Devil's Partner. An old man sells his soul to the devil and turns into a young man. He then uses witchcraft and black magic to win a woman from his rival. So it's like grumpy old men with magic, I guess. 1961, Bloodlust! All one word, exclamation point. A crazed hunter kidnaps people and turns them loose on his private estate, where he hunts them for sport. Again, most dangerous game. 1961, The Devil's Messenger. Satan enlists the help of a suicide victim in hell to lure unsuspecting earthly victims to their eternal doom. Contains 3 somewhat unrelated Twilight Zone-esque stories, so it's an anthology. 1961, Dr. Blood's Coffin. People are mysteriously disappearing near a remote Cornish village, where a scientist is experimenting with reviving the dead. 1961, Anatomy of a Psycho. A crazed brother of a condemned killer sent to the gas chamber swears vengeance on those he holds responsible for his brother's execution. 1961, Beast of Yucca Flats. A defecting Soviet scientist is hit by a nuclear explosion near Yucca Flats and roams around as a beast. 1961, Creature from the Haunted Sea. A crook decides to bump off members of his inept crew and blame their deaths on a legendary sea creature. What he doesn't know is the creature's real, and I'm gonna guess doesn't want to be framed for murder. 1961, Night Tide. On leave in a shoreside town, Johnny becomes interested in a young dark-haired woman. They meet and he learns that she plays a mermaid in a local carnival. After strange occurrences, Johnny begins to believe that she may actually be a real mermaid that habitually kills during the cycle of the full moon. 1962, Carnival of Souls. After a traumatic accident, a woman becomes drawn to a mysterious abandoned carnival. While the US release of Carnival of Souls failed to include a copyright on its prints, automatically making it public domain, there were foreign releases marketed that did contain a copyright card and was protected only for overseas sale, just not US sales apparently. 1962, The Brain That Wouldn't Die. A doctor experimenting with transplant techniques keeps his girlfriend's head alive while she is decapitated in a car crash, then goes hunting for a new body. Because that's what you're gonna do when you have your decapitated girlfriend's head reanimated. Come on now. This was theatrically released by American International Pictures, who, again, failure to add copyright information to the new title card resulted in the film quickly falling into public domain. 1962, Ega. That's the name of the thing, Ega. It's E-E-G-A-H. Don't believe me, look it up. Teenagers stumble across a prehistoric caveman who goes on a rampage. That's all he does. 1963, Dementia 13. Whilst out on a rowboat with her husband John, Louise Harlon kills him and casts his body overboard, telling the family he left on an urgent business trip. Louise's main concern: she can only inherit part of his family fortune if he's still alive. The Harlons are a strange family, still grieving over the death of their youngest daughter, Kathleen, who drowned in a pond when she was a young child. The family holds an annual ceremony in remembrance on the anniversary of her death. But this year, with John recently deceased, someone is wielding an axe intent on murder. This was technically almost a Corman. What happened is Corman gave Coppola, money to make this one. And he basically said go for it because Corman has a habit of finishing things early and reusing sets, so he loves doing stuff like that. Figured give Coppola a shot. He ended up coming back in later and splicing in a lot more women in their underpants because Corman, he knew it sold. So this is a very early and I believe possibly first film for Coppola. 1963, The Terror. A young officer in Napoleon's army pursues a mysterious woman to the castle of an elderly baron. The film fell into public domain again because there was no copyright notice on the credits. 1964, Last Man on Earth. When a disease turns all of humanity into the living dead, the last man on Earth becomes a reluctant vampire hunter. This one is, again, a big example of horror in public domain. This stars Vincent Price. Apparently, this one's copyright lapsed in the 80s. 1965, Nightmare Castle. A woman and her lover are tortured and killed by her sadistic husband. The pair return from the grave to seek vengeance. 1965, Bloody Pit of Horror. A photographer and his models go to an old abandoned castle to shoot some sexy covers for horror novels. Unbeknownst to them, the castle is inhabited by a lunatic who believes himself to be the reanimated spirit of a 17th century executioner whose job it is to protect the castle against intruders. 1966, Manos, The Hands of Fate. A family gets lost on the road and stumbles upon a hidden, underground, devil-worshipping cult led by a fearsome master and his servant, Dorgo. This one has definitely gotten popular off Mystery Science Theater 3000 doing it. It's in a bit of a legal sticky situation right now though, because it is still technically public domain, but there are people right now trying to claim a copyright on it to pull it out of public domain. I'm going to link to an article in the description from AV Club, and if you're not familiar with AV Club, they are an offshoot of The Onion, which yes is fake. AV Club is real. 1966, Jesse James meets Frankenstein's daughter. Legendary outlaw of the Old West, Jesse James, on the run from Marshal McPhee, hides out in a castle of Baron Frankenstein's granddaughter, Maria, who proceeds to transform Jesse's slow-witted pal Hank into a bald zombie she names Igor. 1967, Yongari, Monster from the Deep. Earthquakes in Central Korea turn out to be the work of Yongari, a prehistoric gasoline-eating reptile that soon goes on a rampage through Seoul. Okay, and independent filmmakers, if you haven't noticed there's a trend of copyright notice issues, this one coming up, be careful. 1968, Night of the Living Dead. There is a panic throughout the nation as the dead suddenly come back to life. The film follows a group of characters who barricade themselves in an old farmhouse in an attempt to remain safe from the flesh-eating monsters. I'm again going to link an article down in the description to explain how in the world one of the biggest horror movies, the one everybody's seen and everybody knows, fell into public domain. Guess what? It was a copyright mistake. Protect your work. Imagine, I'm sure Romero is not hurting for money at all, but imagine what he would have made had he kept this under copyright. Well, yes, you can argue people wouldn't have played it ad nauseum if it wasn't in public domain, but this is, compared to a lot of these other movies that are clearly kind of hokey and nobody really cared about them, Night of the Living Dead clearly had thought, time, a lot of effort put in. I'm not saying these other filmmakers didn't do that. I'm saying this is a classic that could have seriously made Romero bang. So, if you take anything away from this, Copyright your shit. This will conclude part 5 of our look at public domain horror films. If you like what you're hearing, please hit like, comment, subscribe. If you don't like what you're hearing, please leave me a comment and let me know. And it's time for the YouTube channel Spotlight. Today it's going to be Morbid Minds. This is a channel that focuses on true crime, horror, and just other morbid curiosities. While they typically deal with more extreme topics that can be very upsetting to people, they always do it with sensitivity to the people involved. You never lose the sense of these are real people and something really bad happened to them. Even when they do their list videos where they deal with things in much quicker increments, you never get the sense of it's just out there to shock people. So go check out Morbid Minds. They're linked in the description and they should be linked on screen as well. Give them a subscription, tell them I sent you. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy.